protesters are on the streets of Johannesburg, South Africa, demanding the immediate departure of foreigners. So we're turned live. A South African newspaper said the protesters who carried weapons such as knob carries are waiting to be addressed by Mongo Shutu Buthelezi, a notable politician and Zulu tribe leader. The protest is coming 1 week after attacks on foreigners sparked reactions across the continent. Joining us in the studio is Ekene, a social commentator, to discuss the new twist to the South African xenophobic attacks. Thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure, as always.
What do you think is responsible for this spate of attacks on Nigerians living in South Africa?
Well, you know, people who've been observing the way things have been going have observed or made the comment that every 6 months, it seems, we've had some kind of an explosion of vengeance or anger or reaction from the South. Well, I won't call it totally the South Africans, but the poor South Africans in the rural areas. And then it's been doused and somehow we've moved on. So I don't think anything new particularly has happened, except that things haven't changed in terms of their living conditions, in terms of their working conditions. And people are not angry enough to go attacking other people unless they themselves are frustrated. So they're being frustrated by their situation, and it's the same old thing. They're being told that their situation is produced by other people who've come in, particularly Africans. So, you know, a South African has said she wants to make the distinction between the word xenophobia and actually call it what it is. Afrophobia. They're attacking fellow Africans because they are easily accessible to them. They're the ones they see, and it fits the narrative that these are the ones taking their jobs. These are the ones responsible for their conditions, when we know really the government hasn't done enough to alleviate their poverty, to give them an education and give them, you know, some sort of skills training to improve their situation.
Do you think maybe the way Nigerians live, some allege that they live sort of extravagantly and they're living in the face of these South Africans, do you think that might have any bearing to the treatment that they're being given now?
I guess you could say it's provocative in a way that people have said maybe during the Second and First World War, the Jewish people were provoking. But I think that's always an excuse because even South Africans themselves, who are able to analyze the situation objectively, have said Nigerians are not doing anything that particularly makes them more of a target than anyone else. And even when it comes to accusing them of maybe living illegitimately or pursuing illegitimate activities, they're like the foot soldiers amidst people like, you know, is it the Jewish mafia, or Israeli mafia, or even the Chinese mafia on ground. So there are other people who are equally, and even the South Africans themselves apparently are doing a lot of illegitimate activity. So Nigerians are not necessarily any more outstanding than other people when it comes to doing things outside of the norm. They just seem to be the convenient targets. But let's not, because we're Nigerians, we tend to be focusing on Nigerians. It's not just Nigerians being targeted. There are other Africans in South Africa who are being targeted as well.
No, but we don't seem to hear other countries coming out as strongly as Nigerians. It seems to be that the particular Africans are Nigerians in this instance.
Well, at least I've heard of a Tanzanian who was attacked and mistaken for, you know, we thought he was Nigerian. But I've heard of other people, you know, their neighbors as well. Botswana, they are also provoked. After all, some of them boycotted the ECOWAS, you know, conference. So it's clear that we're not the only ones, but maybe because it concerns us, we've made it our focus. You know, we're talking about our people, so we're stepping up, and it's good that we're now beginning to step up to defend our own.
What do you make of federal government's reaction so far to this entire xenophobic attack, this particular stretch of time?
I think they were a little slow, but they began to gather momentum. They're responding to the people. Unfortunately, as people have said, they seem to wait for people to begin to resort to self-help, to begin to take matters into their own hands. It seemed that then provoked them to do the right thing. I believe that if between the federal government and the South African government, actions were taken we wouldn't be where we are now, clearly. So I think they were a little slow, but now they're beginning to gather momentum. So let's watch and see if they actually, what we're hoping is that they will institute a case against the South African government for the people who've lost their means of livelihood, because there is a case to be made.
Yeah, they did say there will be no compensation. I think that matter was raised by the foreign minister, Nigeria's foreign affairs minister.
Yeah, so what we're saying is let it not stop there. Let them pursue it, because it's clearly a case that can be argued in court.
In your opinion, how do you think these issues can be addressed in such a way that it does not escalate to maybe not only, you know, violence as it is, but a diplomatic bottleneck that will be we might not be able to get out of?
Well, again, it's sensitization. It's we hear that the man in the current situation we read about in a place called Jepstown, Buthelezi, I think is his name, was attempting to enlighten people, and he was doing a rally, even though it turned slightly violent. But I think we mustn't, especially from the South African end, there mustn't be a letdown. They shouldn't be intimidated by the aggression, and go out, even if they have to send people that they respect, to educate them and say, look, your problem isn't this, whilst at the same time rolling out palliatives and saying, look, we hear that you're frustrated, we take responsibility. They need to step up and actually tell them the truth. We take responsibility for your conditions. We're going to put so many things in place, and remind them of the figures that actually these immigrants are not the cause, and look at the number of them on the ground, and look at the ones that, and the illegitimate ones will be sent home. Let them, inform them, keep them in the know.
Thank you very much, Ekene, for coming on the news.
My pleasure.